So welcome back to the SWAU's official YouTube channel. I'm Brian, your host, and this is a conversation with the stars. And we've got a great star from one of my favorite movies. It was the first vampire movie I ever saw. I'm sure I saw it at too early of an age. But we've got one of the Frog brothers himself, Alan Frog, Jamison Newlander. Jamison, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Always happy to be talking to my UK fans and maybe soon to be fans. We'll see.
Oh, do you know what? I always judge someone from if they've seen The Lost Boys. And believe it or not, when I interview at work, that is one of the questions I always put in.
Really?
Have you seen The Lost Boys? And if they say no, I don't invite them back for a second interview.
I love it. I love it.
You can't trust someone that hasn't seen The Lost Boys. That's all I'm saying. So
you know, it's a good point. I run into people who haven't seen it. You know, like when I see people on the street, you know, I'm not necessarily easily recognizable unless unless you've seen me recently, or there are some people who can recognize me from '86, you know, but when people find out I'm from The Lost Boys, some people have never heard of it. They're like, oh, I don't know, you know.
That's shocking.
But some people
it really is. It's shocking. It's like it will forever be in, our libraries. I guarantee that near enough, every home will have a copy of it. I don't understand when people say they haven't seen it. But the problem is now we are flooded by content. We are flooded by streaming services. And I can remember back in the 80s. So the first time I watched The Lost Boys was, I think I was about 9. And it was on VHS because I wasn't old enough to go to the cinema to watch it. And I remember my dad had an agreement with the man that ran the video shop. He said I could have horror movies and movies that were 18 certificate if they didn't have any nudity. And so The Lost Boys passed the mark. So I took it home. I watched it. It freaked me out. It scared me, but it made me laugh at the same time. And that created my love for vampire movies. So I always use Lost Boys as like a starting point on how good these vampire movies are. So before we talk about this amazing film, I want to find out what sparked your interest in the industry, because it's not a normal job. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So what was it? Was it a certain film? Was it a certain actor? How did you get into the industry?
That's a great question. Okay, so I think at first it was so my parents were divorced, and they benefited me in one particular way, which is that my mom dated this actor, and she got to know his agent. They just they would go out and stuff like that. So she got to know his agent, and she said, "Hey, listen, you're starting to look a bit like kind of an all-American kid." I was sort of had like an awkward phase from 8 to 12, and then so like little by little, it's like, okay, you know what? I might actually have some, I might actually like kind of look like a regular kind of kid, and so that combined with the fact that I was really always looking for opportunities to perform, it was like something that was natural to me, like there would be like events in the community, and use it as an opportunity to do like grease, lip sync grease, for everybody, and it always went off well, and so I just loved it. And I think if I was thinking about an actor, probably Dustin Hoffman was that era of like Hoffman, Pacino. I saw at age 12, I think I saw Pacino in American Buffalo. I don't know if you know that play. It was one of the early plays, of like Mamet, one of those early success from David Mamet, and I was in London, and we happened to be playing, and so we saw it, and he was just incredible. It just blew me away. So I think if it had to ride on an actor, it's Hoffman maybe, but that performance of Pacino is probably what did it, I think.
And what an inspiration to follow. You couldn't get any better than that man himself. I mean, can you remember your very first audition?
I can. Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. Good. Did you?
No. I was just about to say, can you remember your first audition and how did it go?
Yeah, so it's funny because I recently remembered that I had an audition before the audition that I had that went well. So it's like I signed up with this agent, that I was telling you about, and so she sent me out on this audition, and it was so how like when something's that embarrassing, you can. And there's no reason it was that embarrassing. It was just that I didn't know what in the world I was doing. Like they were like, it was for a commercial, and they said, okay, so here's the scenario. You walk into this, or you walk out, and there's French fries, falling from the ceiling, raining from the ceiling. So, react, and it's like, I didn't even think about like making noise or anything. I was just like, I just felt like such a jackass when I think back, back on it, even though it's like, it probably wasn't, it's just that it's probably just an example of someone auditioning for the first time. So there it was a disaster.
Oh, bless you. well, you did all right for yourself. So it couldn't have been, to put you off. I mean, with your acting, and obviously with Lost Boys and Bone Tomahawk and the rest of your great credits to your name, is there a point in your career that you actually stopped and thought, do you know what? This is for me. Do you know that moment when you thought, actually, I'm actually really good at this. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because there really kind of was that moment. I was working with an acting coach, and really, actually, now that I think about it, trying to round out the whole story about like the agent and stuff, is that I wanted to be a doctor. I had like a leg thing. I wore a leg brace when I was a kid. This thing called leg Perthes, if anybody's interested in what that is. But and so it made me be like, oh, cool, doctors. I knew that this my orthopedist was the best guy. He was so great. And so I wanted to be a doctor. Not really realizing that it's not really for me. The more now that I look back, in retrospect, but of course, whatever. So I wanted to raise money for med school, and so I was working with this acting coach, and I was like, well, I'm really just going to kind of do this until I'm 18, make some money, and for college and everything. And he was like, you may not want to do that. Like you may want to really do this. Just based on the work I'd been doing with him, and just the bit of early success I had. It was before Lost Boys, and it was a moment where I had to kind of do that reckoning thing. And I kind of have had to do that reckoning many times in my life, to tell you the truth. To be like, I might get emotional about this. By the way, reminder, I do get emotional. It's not bad or anything. It just it'll pass. If I'm talking about this kind of stuff. So it's like, throughout my life, and that was a time. It was like, being a doctor, I mean, it's not safe. It's not a safe thing in the actual details of it. It's very difficult and very, you need to, a lot of things have to go your way. But to me, it was a safe thing. You be a doctor, and you got a nice income, you get yourself a wife, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. And so to choose acting was hard. It was hard to say, here's this thing that it's nothing stable about it at all, but it happens to be the thing that I might be best at, and it happens to be something that I incredibly, energized by, and so what are you going to do, and so I made that choice a little bit before Lost Boys, actually, and Lost Boys, in a way you could say, is some of the result of that, to just really committing to, I'd been working out, I was committing to that a bit, and it paid off, and it's happened other times in my life where I'm like, maybe, I did a side career for, 16 years actually in marketing, having kids and not wanting not wanting to be like, oh yeah, I need this job, for my kid to eat, so getting, kind of a stable job, and then it's like when that, when, kids are a little bit older, you mentioned your kids. I have a 12 and 16-year-old, and so they're a little bit older. They don't need my, hands-on as much, it's like they kind of don't want me around as much, and it's like I have a little more ability. It's like I've last 5 years, I've been sort of journeying, getting back to it and being like, what, let's get back to this. Let's get back on track with what I'm really supposed to be doing. Long answer, but that's the idea.
No. I mean, it's such a truthful answer as well, because, you know, people out there don't realize how unsecure the acting world can be, and you're going from job to job, and you know, when you have a family as well, your priorities completely shift and change as soon as
Totally.
those kids come into this world. Your priorities in life completely change. I mean, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, they change for the better, because it's a magical
Yeah.
experience. It really
Amazing.
is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But yeah, I mean, it's such a truthful answer, and you talk about being emotional. Before we go on to talking about this great iconic movie, people, you know, out there, you've got to check out Jamison's YouTube channel as well, because your videos on, I mean, I've done loads of research on the Lost Boys and everything like that over the years, but your videos of behind the scenes are fantastic. And I've
Thank you
actually
so
learned more from those videos. And there was a moment in there that you got emotional
much.
around,
Right. Yeah.
obviously, these actors going on and doing many things. But again, you know, what I would say is, you know, you've got a family, you know, and that
Totally.
is what a lot of these actors out there, they prioritize their work over family. You know, and I mean, look at Rick Moranis. You know, he actually gave up acting altogether to look after his kids, and I think
Totally.
that is such a great thing, and probably one of the greatest jobs that you can ever have is to be a dad. So,
Absolutely.
which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Which
me,
is
there was something, you know, like talking about, like, you know, things I wanted to do, felt meant to do. Being a dad was important to me, you know, having kids, and it's incredible, you know, like so hard, right? I mean, so hard. It's certainly early, you know, but amazing, beautiful.
I mean,
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, you said that you had a 16-year-old. So
Yeah.
you were 16 when you got the role of
Yeah.
Alan Frog. I mean, if your 16-year-old turned around and went, Dad, I want to be an actor, what would your advice to them be, knowing what
Yeah.
you know now and had lived what you have lived?
That's a great question. And, you know, interestingly enough, I was just looking at work permits this morning for my boys, because they've met with the manager, and they're both, you know, my 12-year-old especially, I think, is particularly inclined for this profession, or at least for this art, you know. And my 16-year-old is, you know, could probably do a lot of different things, but he did a little bit of stuff early on, a voiceover and a theater piece, and he was amazing. And not only that, like, learn the lines like that, you know, learn the lines, learn everybody else's lines too, you know. So maybe a natural, we'll see. But so I'd give this advice. This is the advice I'd give. That, first of all, you know, protect yourself. You know, there's a lot of, my boys are a little bit older. We're savvy to this, but you know, you can get taken advantage of in this business. You know, and get, you know, abused and stuff, and it's important to be careful. So that's, you know, first, of course, it's sort of like you know, advice. Then I would say it's a people business, is what I'm realizing. And, you know, honestly, what I've come to realize is that it's a people world. You know, that really, it's all, to me, I hit on something, you know, a number of years ago, that, like, it really is all about the people. I think, you know, life, and, you know, and our connection to other people, and the connections we make, and that, all that beautiful stuff. And so, you know, as a sort of a offshoot of that, this business is totally about people, and probably all businesses are, but this is a business about people and relationships. And I would say it's not just what you do on set, on camera. It's also, like, you know, get to other people's shows and movies, get to premieres, support people, get out, you know, party a little. I mean, I'm not saying, like, you know, break any laws or anything like that, you know, but, like, you know, go out, have a good time. You know, that's part of building relationships in this business, because making a movie is sort of just like hanging out with some very specific goals in mind, you know, because most of it is just hanging out, actually, you know, because there's so much camera set up, you know.
I mean, do you think it's harder now for a 16-year-old to get into the business than back in 1986?
You know, it's a I think for some people it's harder, and some people it's easier. Like, then, if you didn't live in LA, you know, like, there was someone I knew who was who was doing commercials who lived like maybe an hour and a half outside LA or maybe 2 hours outside of LA, and they made it work, but not everybody could do that. But that was just an hour and a half, 2 hours. If you lived, another state, whatever, you really couldn't do it. And so living in LA, it was probably easier. But even then, it's like my mom knew somebody and it worked out. And, I ended up, even though I blew that audition, I took a class, a commercial audition class, and I ended up getting the next commercial I auditioned for, so I had some luck and stuff. So I don't know that it was necessarily that easy then, but it probably was more straightforward then than it is now. Now it's like probably there's some of the similar things, getting an agent, getting out on auditions, getting to the right classes and things like that. But then there's YouTube and, and Instagram and all this stuff that, really makes a huge difference. Not only can you make big money on that, but, you know about this, obviously, that it's like, not only can you make big money, but it's also, you can advance your career, in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think now, I think it's sort of, it's who I think as well, and there's so many young people trying to make it, but then again, there's so many shows out there. I mean, literally, there's thousands on all the streaming. But you know what? Let's talk about the Lost Boys, and I'm going to bring up a picture here of all three of you there. And I'm going to say one of my biggest regrets. I went to a convention many years ago and met Corey Feldman. And then sat next to him was Corey Haim. And he looked over and I said hello, but I looked at his line and his line was enormous. And I had to go. And I kicked myself to this day not being able to shake his hand and get his autograph. So let's start at the beginning. How on earth did you land the role of Alan Frog? Because honestly, I can't tell you how much I love this movie. It's just amazing. I made my wife watch it for the first time the other night. And she actually really enjoyed it as well. She really enjoyed it. So how did you land the role? What was that process? Because from what I've read, you didn't actually do the first audition. You actually got the callback, which is you've sort of like missed the first bit. So how did that all work out?
So it's like, it's a good example of like who and that sort of networking. So I had been out on enough auditions at that point, and I had a good agent. He was a small agent, but he was good. He hustled, and his name was Guy Chateau. It was like very, it was like very Hollywood name. It sounded very Hollywood name to me. And Guy Chateau, but really great guy, and he got me some great opportunities, including Lost Boys, and so I got in, and Marion Doherty, who is somewhat famous, I think, for discovering people, and so there was another film she really liked me for, and there was this opportunity to get emancipated, which here it means, that like I was already 16, or I was approaching 16, so you could like become an adult basically. And then, so if you were an adult, you didn't have to do the like school on the set. It was a little cheaper, and it was an independent movie. And so she said, is that something you would consider? And I was like, not really. No, I'm not really into doing that. I'm still doing school, and I'm happy to be a minor still, and so, but it was good connection, and then also Schumacher, Joel was, pretty good friends with my acting teacher, actually. And so he came and spoke. He had just he'd come off of St. Elmo's Fire, which was huge, and so he was talking to an acting class of young people, and we were all just like, trying to get in front of him, trying to get a question so Joel Schumacher could see us. And I didn't get to ask my question, but even so, so when I got into the room, so basically, so they were able to get me, maybe it was already in process, or they were just like, don't worry about it, come in for the callback, because Marion probably knew that she would very likely call me back anyway. And Joel, I don't know, maybe he was like, oh, he's studying with Lynette, maybe whatever. So I went in there, and it just went great from the beginning. With Joel, he was just really awesome, and that ended up being true all the way through the shoot. He was like this kind of like uncle who was just like really creative and awesome, and so he really liked me, and he, like what I was talking about, but like working out, like he was like, are you built, and I was like, yeah, punch me, like just being like just a cocky little guy, and I was like, so that was, it just all worked out. Those pieces fell into place, and then the next time they called me back, I met Feldman in the waiting room, and it was like, that was the beginning of the big time a little bit right there. It was like, okay, and then, I mean, I don't know if it gets ahead of you with your questions, but it's like then getting to set and it's like, oh, Corey Haim is coming too, he's going to be in this movie too. And Kiefer Sutherland, and little by little, it started to be like, okay, I guess this is the big time.
So when you met Corey Feldman for the first time, I mean, at his age, he was already basically a veteran. I mean, what was that like, and how was he with you? I mean, you obviously hit it off because you see that so on screen, you as the Frog Brothers. But what was he like to meet the first time? Was there any ego there, or did you just hit it off like a couple of young kids?
Yeah, it basically was the latter. We, at first I didn't fully even, when we first started talking, I didn't even fully connect that it was the kid from Goonies, like I didn't fully wrap my head around it for a few minutes. And it's like, it was just like being with a kid, exactly. It was just like being like, we were both 15, I think, ish, he might've been 14, but we were just like talking, and he's so funny. I mean, Feldman in person, especially when he's in a groove, he's so quick and funny. And so, and I'm that way too, kind of. I'm like, I'd love to joke around, so it's like, we were just joking immediately, and it was great, and yeah, and that definitely played into the relationship, and it played into why I got the role, really. I mean, that we had that connection.
That is awesome, because to meet him, he was lovely to me. And you often get a sense that especially kids, if they're not being grounded properly, I think they can sort of, they can act a certain way. So that's really, really nice to hear. And then the beautiful thing about you going for your audition, just going back a bit, is the fact that you wore your dad's military jacket, which I think is the sweetest thing. And I think that's incredible. I mean, what inspired you to do that? I mean, was it just a case of it looked cool, so you wanted to wear it? Or did you feel that it would aid you in that audition process?
Yeah, so it's a few things. First of all, I used to wear my dad's military stuff. Like, that was, I was sort of in that era. He had a couple of great things from the army, like a couple of great jackets, and I would just wear them. It was like, and so that one particularly was a great one. It was light, it wasn't like super heavy. It was the fatigue. I don't know if if that means something to everyone, but it seemed to mean something to my dad, that it was called the fatigues. Yeah. And so. And especially that one too, it had the dice on the sleeve, it was just so cool. So I used to wear that. And then part of the instructions on the audition were that it was to dress military, but clean cut. Like, don't, that military can mean lots of different things. People, you can come like, oh, like with a mud, you know what I mean? Like, you never know what some kid buys for an audition, for a big movie, So, and so I wore just a clean white T-shirt under that thing, and I'll give credit to my dad there. He really like helped me focus on that, like he, on the fact that it was both of those things, that it was clean cut and military. So it was really, it was really buttoned up, kind of thing, and so it just all kind of, that's another thing that's kind of worked together for it. Joel loved it, loved that jacket and recreated it, for Alan Frog. So it's just, overall, it's just, I got to figure it was the right choice, if it ended up in the movie.
And it worked out incredible, because I was going to ask, like, where did the inspiration come from for the look of the Frog Brothers? But obviously you aided in that without even realizing at the audition, which is great. I mean, we talked about your first time on set. I mean, can you remember the very first day of shooting on the film? And what was that like, stepping foot onto the set?
Yeah, so they did a. I think they must have done this purposely. I haven't talked to anybody about it, but the first shot was the shot. The first shot that we shot was like everybody was there basically. I guess the vampires weren't, but they seemed to be off camera somewhere. Like it seemed like everybody was there, and so it was the scene on the porch when Sam goes out to get Nanook, and then we're like, get back here, it's like it's a great moment where you're just like. Oh my God, and so, but the cool thing about it is that, there weren't any particular lines. It was just yelling. So it was like, I think it was their way of seeing, everybody's cool. Everybody can do this. When we say action, they know what they're doing, and I think it was particularly for me. I mean, not like, they didn't set it up just for me, but I was probably the greenest of the people on set that day, and in the shot that day anyway. So,
and I've got to mention again, going back to your YouTube channel,
yeah,
you mentioned that Jason Patrick and you were talking about maybe saving Grandpa's house. That was a golf club. Do we know any news about that? Is it still there?
So good.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
So yeah, it's definitely still there. I saw it again when I was back there a few months ago. And there is, I just heard, so there's no official news, but I can give you updates kind of on like what I think the future might look like. So I just heard of an organization that's interested in rebuilding that whole area, including maybe maybe even the golf course, and then, thinking of that as the clubhouse, which it originally was. So I just heard about them, and from Joe, from the comic book store owner. He and I've gotten close because of the show, and just like we like each other. He's a funny guy, and so I'd like to connect with them. Jason's idea, which I might have talked about more in depth on the show, or maybe not, but Jason's thought was that like we rebuilt it, the Warner Brothers, the Lost Boys production, we rebuilt it on the soundstage in Burbank Studios. So it seems to me that we could, even if it's a landmark, we might have the status in a way to, to rebuild it using the same sort of whatever, people that did it back then, Bo Welch and stuff. So that's kind of the hope. And so maybe we got this next year, the 20th is the 39th anniversary of the filming up in Santa Cruz, and then the next year the 40th. It's nice because we'll get the 40th of the filming. And then the next year after that, 87 is the 40th. Can you believe it? 40 years. Crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Yeah. Our time flies, and the older we get, the faster the years go.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's shocking. And every year I think to myself, I haven't done enough this year. What have I done this year to count? But no, that would be incredible to have that, because there are fans that travel globally to these locations. And we did mention at the beginning the lovely people from Hull, which don't feel bad, they speak funny,
and they were lovely. I love them.
But how incredible is that to be there in Santa Cruz and to find people from the UK that's gone out there to see these sites? And how incredible would that be to have that house done up, maybe have merch inside, or and stuff like that. I just think that is incredible. But this film is is tested the test of time. I don't know how the saying goes. I'm thinking about people from Hull now. Yeah. And and it will do forever. I mean, what do you feel makes this movie stand out, amongst all the other horror comedies, horror vampire movies? How does this movie stand out compared to every others out there?
Awesome question. So I've thought about this a lot, or talked about this at different times in different ways. So, the answer is sort of always changing or evolving. And I think one thing that seems to stand out is that that somehow under Joel's direction and his ability to cast and put people in design positions that that work, that somehow we created something that was transcended vampire movies that, you know, could both define a vampire movie, but also, you know, that it was really about these families, you know, the Emersons is just this family. And they came to town, you know, they're in financial trouble. They're living with her father, and teenagers get into trouble and the younger kids get into geeky trouble, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, and and but guess what, you know, it's serious, it's vampires, you know. And it's like, so I feel like they did a really good job, to Joel's credit, to all of our credit really, but also I got to give special credit to Jason Patrick, who, you know, and you know, all the leads, you know, but I've heard Jason talking about this, that it's like he didn't, he never wanted to approach it. He didn't even want to be in a vampire movie, actually, or something like that. You know, he was a very serious actor, and he loved this role. He began to love this role, but he loved it because it was this teenager and this struggle and stuff, and that's what he was playing, and that's what we were playing. That, like, I was playing, I was just playing, I wasn't playing any comedy at all. As far as I was concerned, I was very serious about this, vampire hunting situation, my character. And so it's like, somehow we all delivered something that I think was really genuine, a movie that was really genuine. So I think that's part of it, is that you can really get behind the characters and kind of understand the plot, in a way that's meaningful. But then also the design eye, the visual eye that Joel had, and that he put designers in place that had that too, is and also to Richard Donner's credit and the studio too, to kind of go with them on this. It's so visually stunning. When I watch it, it's like every single scene, the vampire stuff, the Frog Brothers stuff, the stuff at the Emersons, it's, the dinner scene. It's all, if you look at it, it's so visually like perfect, not perfectly, but, beautifully crafted, visually, I think. So I think that's a big part of it too,
I mean, being 16 and on this film, you must have been so focused on getting your characters so perfect. I mean, with all these people around you, like Kiefer Sutherland, Diane West, were you taking sort of advice and notes from them, because they were like the older actors on set? Did they give you any advice, or was it all business when you were filming?
So I think that there was always advice thrown around. I remember getting some advice. It's not exactly advice, but just sort of like talking to a veteran, hearing some of the war stories, about this and that, and what happened on this movie back in, when he was playing this movie. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that movie that you were in. Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, that's what happened. That's funny, that, and just hearing this, and it takes some of the mystery out of making movies when you're talking to like greats, people like Diane Wiest was in. I mean, I think Hannah and Her Sisters had already come out. Plus, I loved her from Footloose. I mean, I thought she was, just did the same thing in Footloose. Was able to just in Footloose what she did in Lost Boys, which is just make that family so loving, And so it's like, that was cool to be able to hear that from the veterans, and also veterans like Feldman. I from the beginning talking to Feldman, and we went up on the plane together from LA to Santa Cruz, and which was great. And this other thing, he was just awesome to hang out with. We were like traveling, we were just like kids on a trip. And he brought this little record player, and I was like, that's experience. That's someone who's got some experience. Like he knows he's going to need a record player there. Me, I didn't think about that. So, so there's things like that. I mean, and I was very serious about I had to be, it's a very serious part, and it's a lot of pressure, but everybody made it so fun that after I knew that they liked me, which was pretty quickly, and I think early on, my dad was saying, like, it seems like they like, James, they're happy with Jamison. They're like, yeah, you know that they like him because he's still here.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, cool.
I mean,
So,
you have so many great scenes, so many great one-liners as well, and so many to choose from. Have you got a favorite scene that you're most proud of? Being Alan Frog, being on that set. What's scene stands out for you?
okay, so it's sort of a two-part answer. First of all, the comic book store stuff is my favorite. It was just like we had the whole day, we had the whole weekend. I think the whole weekend to shoot that stuff, and it was just us. You know, I mean, it was not just us. I mean, it was a whole set full of people, but the exchanges and figuring out the exchanges, and you know, Haim sort of discovering the like, you know, you guys sniff an old newsprint or something, you know, doing it that way rather than just like, you guys sniff an old newsprint or something, which would be like a basic way to do the line, you know, finding these cool things, working with these people, and, you know, not just him, but Schumacher and, you know, and Michael Chapman, the cinematographer. Everybody was so having such a good time, you know, lining shots up, loving the shots, you know, it was just great. You know, it's a really great vibe. I mean, I also have to say that delivering the Eddie Munster line,
holy shit, it's the attack of Eddie Munster. Yeah.
That way, like I gotta be proud of myself for that, because you gotta nail that. You know?
that was hilarious, and it gets me even now when I rewatch the movie, because it makes me giggle. And I think that's the great thing about this movie, in the fact that in the most scariest moments there is light, and there is lines like that you know you get shocked and then you laugh at it, and I just think it's perfect, and it's perfect timing as well, and delivery, which is fantastic. I mean, I know you've mentioned a few times in different interviews regarding the scene with the bath and the slime. I mean, with the 4K version, I'm just going to bring up the picture. There we go, 4K, because it's finally in 4K, which came out a few years ago.
It looks great.
Which they should have brought it out sooner in 4K. How dare they wait till, you know, until they did. But I've got it on 4K. As soon as it came out, I was pre-order. Get that bad boy, and I, you know, the film just pops. It really does in 4K. I mean, with the scene with the bath and the slime, what was that like to film? Because that must have been great on one hand and terrible on the other, because that must have got everywhere.
That was probably the worst scene, you know, practically to film. And yeah, like I've talked about, you know, it's like you don't think about it necessarily when watching the movie, but it's like Feldman and I were like a few inches deep in slime for, you know, an hour, you know, I mean, at times, you know, just sitting there waiting for, you know, and then the shot, they redo the shot, but we don't want to come out because we're, you know, it's like we're set, and, you know, and everything. And so just sitting in that cold, gross slime. And I'm not necessarily someone who was like, oh, cool slime. You know, I thought it was gross kind of from the beginning, you know, so that was hard. And it also, you know, it's like the, you know, we did it 3 times. I don't know if I've talked about, I know I've talked about that. I've seen this, but that it's like, it, you know, exploded out of it, but it had been in the tanks too long, and it like kind of went bad, the slime. So it wasn't red anymore. It was like bluish green kind of thing all over everything. So they had to clean up everything, and we had to go take showers, you know, in Richard Donner's office, you know, and then they brought us back, and they had added, you know, they did it again, but they had added too much red. So it looked like The Shining, you know, it looked like there was like blood all around, you know, and yeah. And Joel, I guess, had said to the studio that he wasn't going to make it too gory, you know, so he was like, we can't do this. We got to do it again. So went back, showered, you know, cleaned the whole setup, you know, and so it sucked, but, you know, I mean, it was okay. I mean, you know, ultimately we're shooting a movie, you know, but
I mean, back then, I mean, looking back, I mean, it must have felt like a dream, you know, working with all these amazing people, Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
You know, what is your fondest memory of this whole journey on the Lost Boys? Because, you know, watching that video on YouTube, going back to all the locations, and you know, you can tell by watching you that you're so passionate about this film, and so passionate about what you've done on this film, and the fact that your face has been seen by billions, I'm betting, worldwide, and is loved by so many for years to come. I mean, what is it that really, you know, sticks with you around working on this film?
So let me think about this. Like something that just keeps flashing in my mind, and it's hard to nail down exactly like that thing, but I'll just go with this because I can't seem to get it out of my head, which is that when I first got to Santa Cruz with Feldman, we like checked in and everything, and all that's fun anyway. And I got like you get like per diem, like it's like more cash than I've ever seen, like as a kid, and it's like and then getting settled, and he was like, okay, let's go meet Corey Haim, and so we went to the room where the vampires were hanging out, Billy Worth, Brooke McCarter, the cool kids, basically they were so cool. And so Haim was over there just chilling with the cool kids, and me and Feldman walked in, and it's like, there I am, meeting Corey Haim and all these guys. And I was like, it just occurred to me in that moment, like talk about like, you were saying to feel like, would you say surreal or magical?
Surreal. Yeah, magical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of the moments where I was like, wow, here's a kid who I'd been really vocal about wanting to work with Corey Haim after Lucas, because he just was so awesome. And here I was, working with him, and here I was working with Corey Feldman, basically two of the biggest kid actors at the time. It was incredible.
I bet. I mean, and then to continue this wonderful journey, we've got conventions where you go to quite a few, and I couldn't make the ones that you came in to the UK, and I was really gutted. I mean, I've met Kiefer Sutherland a couple of times because, in true sort of Lost Boys style, I think everyone is going into music. I mean, even yourself and Corey Feldman and Kiefer Sutherland. I've been to two of his concerts, and he's actually really good, which really shocked me. So yeah, I mean, what is it about conventions that you like? Because I in your video again on YouTube, you did like a little sign in. Well, I wouldn't say literally. It looked like that you was there for hours, and your arm must have fallen off by the amount of things you were signing. I mean, what is it about the conventions that you love so much?
Okay, so I would say the biggest thing is, like, we've talked about this a bunch. I remember, like, with the guys, Billy Worth and Chance Corbett, played Laddie and stuff. That it's like, so we did this movie, and we're getting all this fan mail. Back in in the 80s, after the movie came out, we got a bunch of fan mail, and you try to respond to it, and you're kind of amazed at all this fan mail, but there's not really that personal interaction with fans. And so in like 2005-ish, a woman named Erin Gray from Buck Rogers and a bunch of other great stuff, she approached us all to start doing these conventions. And it's, first of all, we did it already because it's a little bit of bread, and it's it's nice. It's always nice to make a little bit of bread. Go overseas. We've got it. First one was over to England. We went to, it was one in Milton Keynes near London, I guess, and it was amazing. It was amazing, and lots of cool stories actually about that convention. But the thing that we began to discover then, and then more and more these days, is that here we are interacting with fans, and it's so meaningful for fans to meet us. And because I understand that too. I have movies that are really meaningful, shows that I grew up with, Little House on the Prairie, for example, like out here. I don't know if you know that show.
Yeah.
I remember meeting the mom. I worked with her at a theater in Kentucky, actually, and I was just like, I almost couldn't speak the first time I met her. It's his ma, like, and so people feel that way about us. Like, you like you said, you saw the movie at 9 or whatever you said, 13. We've been with people their whole lives.
I mean, have you got any memorable moments of meeting people? I mean, any encounters that have stayed with you?
Yeah. So it happens a lot that I've actually become friends with fans. Where like they come again and again to conventions, and we end up having a drink, or at the VIP party, and pretty soon I know them. So those are really nice, and people are, our fans are really awesome. Generally, they're really, really good people. The ones that really stand out to me are where people have said that they're, that they have autism, and this was their comfort movie, Lost Boys, which really touches me. Because I can understand that. My kids are, my 16-year-old, there's some question about whether or not he's got a toe on the spectrum or not, but he feels he does, and on the autism spectrum. And, I understand it, he's very, it's like, again, it's hard to tell. It's very high functioning, if that's what they call it, I guess. And, but at the same time, I understand the need for certain kinds of comfort, that we all have those needs, and to be able to be that for somebody is really cool. I thought that was really cool, and I'm proud of that.
I mean, we forget that these films are a chance for escapism. When people just want to get their mind off something and be entertained. But it's just great when such a fandom is there, and you see people dressed up, as the vampires or the Frog Brothers. I mean, have you ever dressed up as Alan Frog since the movie?
You know what? It's funny. I actually do, quite a bit, because on my own. No, I'm kidding. In my room. No, I like, first of all, I just got a call from Feldman. He lives pretty close to me, actually, and we do cameos sometimes as the Frog Brothers. We sort of have it out there, cameo videos, and so we have one in a couple of days. Like, we have one right now that we're going to film in a couple of days, and we put on, it's like it's not, we don't go all the way, but I have the beret, and he's got his, his bandana and stuff, and we have some stakes, and we just goof around and stuff. So there's that, and then also we did photo ops with the Frog Brothers in at Chiller. It's a convention in New Jersey, like at the end of the year, like October. So that was I think that's the first time we actually did, where we're dressed up, for photo ops. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
That is awesome, and the fans must eat that up. And I was going to mention your cameos, which I will put a link on the video as well. I mean, is a great opportunity, cameos, where you can actually connect with the fans and get a message for their loved ones. I mean, what's the weirdest thing that someone's asked for? Because I bet, if someone asks you to break up with someone, or propose, or talk some sense into someone as Alan Frog. I mean, what has been the most unusual one? You don't have to say any names, but just what it was sort of about.
I wish there were ones that were like more in that category where I could be like, like, oh yeah, there was this one that I honestly, they've just been pretty like people wanting, a nice message or this or that, or, but there have been a couple where someone gave me a long script, actually. Someone who's actually a friend of mine now, I'm actually working with as a producer. He's a producer. He gave me a script of like a page to, as Alan Frog, to say to his friend, who was like going through a rough time and stuff, and you know what? It was great. It was really great, because also cameos, it's like, it's not a movie, it's a video. So I didn't really memorize the whole thing. I just kind of like, looked down, and like I was sort of looking down, getting the line, so it wasn't like I had to prepare that much for it. It was a lot of fun, actually, so yeah, the cameos are cool. And yeah, I mean, I was also like, I keep my cameo price on the lower side, and then also do half price sometimes, because I enjoy doing it, and it's a great way to connect,
which is great, because there are some actors out there that charge obscene amount of money, which is like, I'm talking about $600-700, which I think is ridiculous. It really, really is. And it must be nice to rekindle those relationships with the other cast members as well at these conventions, because I know like Kiefer's doing them, with the other vampires as well as you and Corey Feldman. So it must be quite nice. It must be an odd experience though, because going back so many years to now stood next to them, that must bring back so many memories.
Oh yeah, it's like it's a wash with memories. It's a flood of memories, and just good feelings too. I mean, Kiefer, I didn't know that well then, because we just didn't have any scenes together, and he was, in kind of a different category in my opinion, even though he was very cool, but I only saw him a couple of times in '86, like where I don't even know if we like Connected Eyes, you know, in 20, you know, in 86. And then in 2019, I saw him at a convention. It was the first time I'd seen him since then. And he was just awesome. He was just so cool. Really was just like, we only had a moment together, but he was just had something nice to say, and we just connected and hugged, you know, and that was really great, you know. I mean, and that's key for, like, Jason Patric is, first of all, I mean, there's a kind of a crew of us that was doing it before the A-listers got involved, you know, like me, Brooke, Billy, both Corey's, Chance, and G. Tom Mack. You know, we were, and Tim Capello sometimes, you know, the sax guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that was a lot of fun. Just us. We had a great time, and we didn't even make huge money back then. I mean, not that we're making huge money, but it's like we didn't even make the sort of legitimate money that you can make now. But it was just a lot of fun, and it was just like a little bit extra, and you know, it was great. And so, but then adding Jason Patric to it, like I said to Jason when we first started doing conventions together again, that, like, you know, I was like, I'm going to still be treating you like a big brother probably a few times that I see you, you know, because kind of keying into that, he was like a big brother back then, you know, and he acted that way. He was awesome with us. We hung out a lot with Jason, and me, Jason, the two Corey's, you know, because we had a bunch of scenes together. The scene where we went down to the cave, you know, we had a bunch of that stuff together. So we hung out a bunch, and he was such a big brother, you know.
That is really, really nice to hear, because Jason Patric, I think, is incredible. I mean, you talk about De Niro earlier on. I can remember him being in a film with De Niro about New York, and it was about
Is that right?
I forgot what it was called. It was based on a book, and it was about a bunch of boys in a boys' home.
Oh yeah, that's Sleepers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great,
Incredible film.
Awesome.
Yeah, incredible film. So a few questions, and we'll bid farewell, because you know what, we could go talking on for hours. But did you keep anything from the film? Did you keep anything like your scripts, your chair back cover, costume? Did you steal anything? That's what we want to know.
Right. You want to know the good stuff. So okay, yes, a couple things. So I have my chair back. I often bring that to conventions just to be like, you know, here it is, you know. And then I have the jacket. Not a lot of people have the jacket still, the original show jacket. Wow. And mine's in pretty good shape. It's, you know, maybe faded a little, but it's good because it actually wasn't a brilliant jacket. It didn't work that great on me. It didn't look that great, but so that's probably why I kept it, because I didn't really wear it that much. So, you know, it's in good shape. But so, you know, that may be coveted, you know, for some people. And then I kept and one script. I kept one script, but it's not. I had combined two scripts incorrectly. You know, like there was like it was like I had one script, and then I got new pages, and I put the new pages in, and it didn't quite work. And they were like, "Oh no, those are the new pages, but that was for a blue script, and you've got a red script or whatever, you know, kind of thing." And so that's what I had. And so it's sort of this script that's kind of out of order, but has some stuff that I think is, you know, might not have made it to the final, you know, which is kind of fun. Probably the script I auditioned with, you know. And then I had a costume for a while. I had the one with my, like, you know, covered in slime, like with my you know, the thing I wore during that time with the goggles, you know, those like big like orange goggles. And I kept it for years, and you know, it was at my dad's place, and then they moved a bunch, and then, you know, my dad passed, and you know, it's like I don't know where it is anymore. You know, there was a time I think where I was like, why am I keeping this? I don't really know why I'm keeping this, you know, because it wasn't, things hadn't gotten big yet. I was like, okay, you know, so I wish I'd have kept it.
Yeah, that would be worth a fortune, because you know, people are unaware, but you know, screen use props and costumes go for tens and tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, like big bucks, really. And especially a film like Lost Boys, it's iconic. It really, really is. And then, you know, you've done acting and writing and directing since the Lost Boys. But is there one project apart from the Lost Boys that you're particularly proud of?
Let's see. You know, you know, it's tricky because it's still almost in process in a way, because I'm still kind of like, it's still realizing itself. But I wrote a play in the 90s about virtual reality, It was called The Virtual Adventures of Rifkat Polito. It's like a film noir, private eye in VR. And it's like, it wasn't the first idea of that. It was around the Neuromancer time, and not too long after that they came out with Matrix, and so it was in the zeitgeist. But I really love that project, and I've done it like 4 or 5 times over the last 25 years, 30 years, and I'm still trying to realize it. But I think that's probably the project that I feel most connected to, aside from Lost Boys, of all the things. And there are other projects, of course, I feel incredibly connected to, but I think this one is probably the answer to that question.
And then there's so many rumors about sequels or a reboot, and there are certain films, and it's people of my age that will say, "Oh, it's like the Goonies. Apparently, there's a sequel in the works for the Goonies."
Right. Yeah.
If there was a remake or a reboot, would you want to be involved? Would you say yes? And if you could, what direction would you want the Frog Brothers to go into?
Okay, some good questions. So first of all, I would be involved because it's a job. I mean, it's like when I remember in the movie, in the TV show The Two Coreys. I don't know if you caught that clip where we were doing a little Lost Boys reunion on the show. It was like back in 2006 or whatever, and they were asking the Coreys about, would you be involved in a Lost Boys sequel? And they were like, only if Joel were involved, with certain conditions. And then it came to me, and I was like, you know what, I would be involved regardless, and which was good. And I got a nice little laugh from the audience, but it's like, that's kind of how I feel. I'm not maybe I don't value my opinion well enough to know whether I know if something's going to work well enough. Certainly if they handed me something and it was total trash or whatever, I might reconsider. But, for me, it's like, I've written, I've directed, but as an actor, I don't necessarily cross over that much. I kind of want to let the writer and director, handle it, and I'll do my best in what I'm doing, so I think I totally would do it. And I think that, and of course, obviously I wouldn't still play the Frog Brothers. I'm too old for that. But at the same time, maybe there's an opportunity of the Frog Brothers passing it down. Maybe I got 2 kids. Maybe maybe we pass it to them. That's kind of a good idea. But I don't know why I haven't thought of that till now. But also, Feldman and I are kind of, it's on the side shelf right now because it's been hard to get momentum on it. But we really want to do a Frog Brothers show. Where we see what the Frog Brothers are up to. It's like, it's all changed. We're the age we are now. We're dealing with whatever, the onset of middle age, if you want to use the M word. No, and but it's like that. Are we handing it off to a new group of people? Is there a new threat? I think there could be a really cool thing, especially, with the success of Cobra Kai. We feel like it could really be cool. And then we don't have the pressure of having it to be a real sequel. It's an offshoot. It's a story about these, so that would be awesome, if that could kind of be the future of it, for us.
That'd be really cool. So in Santa Cruz, later down the line, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is being revamped, isn't it?
Right, you see that? Yeah.
So why not do an offshoot? And I think that would be awesome. And they could have kids, and we could see the Frog Brothers as proper domesticated men now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like completely
totally.
opposite to what they were like when they were older, and then something happens and it gets them involved again. Oh, that would be awesome. Can you imagine the scene when they're getting ready and you
open
get
up
your beret out, and it would be like, oh, that would be amazing. So we need to get this on social media. We need to try and push a Frog Brothers series or film, and get Joel Schumacher involved. I just think that it's just great to see, the older, movies having a second life. You've got He-Man that it's been made into a film, which the Lundgren one was one of my favorite films as well. There's so many films out there that's been remade or rebooted,
And they seem
I
serious
just
about
want
the Goonies too.
the what? Sorry.
They seem serious about the Goonies. That seems very serious.
Yeah,
Feldman thinks
yeah.
it's very serious.
But as long as it's not a reboot and it's a sequel, because
Right.
films like The Lost Boys and Goonies, it would be an insult to our generation if they, murdered it, because there are films out there
Yeah,
that's being redone that have been terrible. So
yeah. I think
let's
they were trying to do a reboot, and I think it just didn't come together or something. But they got the musical too. They're doing.
the musical
There's a
of
Broadway musical for Lost Boys just got announced for next year. Wild, right?
And the music it was one of my first cassettes that I actually bought. And the
Great, yeah.
music is just amazing. Just out of curiosity, when you were making the film, was the music already decided, or was the soundtrack
No,
after?
yeah, it's hard to kind of remember that I had no idea. I had no idea that there would be even I didn't even think about the soundtrack, but yeah, we didn't hear anything. I think it's possible at one point we might have heard "Cry Little Sister" because, in hearing G tell the story about it, he sent in the tape, and then Schumacher called him the next day, and he was like, "This is it. Like you've nailed it." Like, and it was like we were playing it on the set. Kiefer was loving it. So I might have heard that, but other than that, I heard the soundtrack when it came out, and I was like, "Wow, this is going to be good."
Do you know what? It's one of those soundtracks you can't help but singing out loud.
Totally.
In your room. But Jamison, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was great
And
to
fingers
talk to you.
crossed, I'll get to meet you in person at some point. Have you got, just out of curiosity, for people that maybe not be able to make it to some of these conventions, have you got a store, like a merch, where people can buy autographs?
Actually, I do. Yeah, I just started a Shopify store that it's sort of in the last couple of months, and I'm not there yet on promoting it. I have it out on my social. So if you're on my social on Instagram or Twitter, and I'll try to send out another thing about it. I have actually a couple of I made the Airborne shirt actually because I was having a hard time finding it, and for that time we needed to be the Frog Brothers. So I have that up there as well. It's a pretty good price for that Airborne shirt if anybody's looking for it. And then I have a few other shirts on there from pictures I found, in like a family album, that we had taken on set, with me and the two Coreys. And I have like some coasters on there with those and some shirts, some kind of cool stuff, So check that out. I haven't fully wrapped my head around like send in something and I'll sign it. I haven't. They organizations have done that. I haven't done that on my own yet because I'm worried I'm going to like screw something up,
Yeah.
So, but I'm working.
It's best to keep it simple to begin with, and then grow from there. But thank you so much, and I'll get that link as well. I'll put it on the video as well, and rest assured, I'll be ordering some pieces from there for definite. But Jameson, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you. It's great talk.